Hi everybody, Wayne Dorband in Berthoud, Colorado. My guess is most of you have never heard of that place. We're actually northern Colorado, north of Denver, right in the beauty of the Rocky Mountains. As I look out a window, I see 14,000-foot peaks, so really beautiful place. William is with us from Croatia, and he's going to tell us more about his location and such. We thank all of you so much. There are a bunch of you out there. We were doing just sort of having people throw out where they're from earlier. You can still do that. You can throw it in the question thing. Remember, you've got a little dashboard over there on the right, and there's a place where you can throw in questions. We also have a chat over there. If there's links for different things that William talks about or that come up, we'll put it in that chat, and you'll see it there. There will be a replay, and there will be replays of all of these sessions that we do with William. And so those will be available. This will last about an hour, and if we go longer with questions, we'll do that. That's something we will go longer if we have it. We try to be respectful of time. This is the Economic Action Team that is presenting this, and William has graciously agreed to be a presenter for us. We've been getting to know each other over about the last 5 or 6 months. He's a member of the Economic Action Team. He's active, and he comes to our sessions and watches them. He's got an amazing story he's going to tell you, and more importantly, teaching about what you can learn from. And one of our goals here on the Economic Action Team is to bring people like William to give really valuable information to all of you, things that you can use in your lives. We're not going to be pitching for certain things that are out there on these presentations. It's teaching. At the very end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the Economic Action Team is, but that's just a little bit of introduction here on the front end. Thank you guys for all coming. Put your questions up there when they come. William's going to be doing most of the talking. I'm going to watch the questions. Mark is my helper. Mark is from Bangladesh. Say hi, Mark. Unmute your mic, Mark.
Hello. Yeah.
There he is.
Sorry.
So Mark comes on all of these, and he is a huge help, and he'll help get the questions, and he'll get it in our attention. So with that said, William, say hi to everybody.
Hi everybody. You know, this is my first public appearance, so if you ever wondered who is the mind behind Permaculture Apprentice, it's me, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, and he's going to be so great, because I have listened to his Permaculture Apprentice and his training sessions and such, and he's being shy right now, but it's going to be awesome. William, we're going to start out just with a few kind of just personal questions and things so that people can get to know you. Tell us about just what you're doing now in your life with your tell us a little bit about your family, where you're at now in your life, and then what brought you to this point.
Okay, so as you said before, I live in Croatia. And I was actually born here, and I spent at least 5 years or more living abroad and working as a geologist in Australia. But eventually, my wife and I decided to come back, and what I'm doing right now is, I have my offline and online life, and they both take time. So what I do is, I have my farm. I do a lot of research for my website. I explore things practically on the site, so I kind of have those both worlds connected, where I actually feel that I actually need to be experimenting in order to understand whatever I'm writing. So I'm in a pretty good situation right now, where I can actually do that and make that as my living, as I quit my job, and to be honest, I never intended to come back to a job. Rather, I'm pursuing my own thing, and I could say that I experienced working. Well, basically, if I rewind back, I can actually say that I'm just an ordinary person, like any person out there trying to set up a better life for myself and my family. And I'm basically in the trenches of transitioning myself, my family, to more sustainable lifestyle. And as I'm doing that, I'm actually then writing about that, seeing what works, deconstructing what works for others. But as I would usually say, I'm just ordinary man pursuing this extraordinary lifestyle. So it all kind of started, I don't know, many years maybe, because I grew up. In a small village, you could say, always close to nature. And when I was young, Croatia was in the war, so I have experience living through the war, and so that gave me all kinds of perspective. Living like a self-sufficient, self-reliant life, being connected to nature and growing my own food. But eventually, as you go. Well, it's funny. Well, when you're a child, you basically hate all of that because it's a work, and then you decide I don't want to do that. It's too much work, and you go out in life. That's how I went and pursued my engineering career. Actually, pursued my geologist career, and as I went into the world and with my dream of I'll be a geologist and I'll be outside enjoying myself in the nature. The thing actually was kind of not what I was expecting, because I ended up leaving Croatia and going to Australia, and then there I was working as a geologist, exploration geologist, searching for gold and silver, and I was just I was feeling like that I was betraying my values, and my values were I like nature and I like everything connected to to the earth, and there I was working actively being involved into destruction of that nature. So that in the meantime, as I was going through all that, I discovered permaculture, and eventually I made a plan that I'll be that I'll leave that lifestyle behind and come back to my to Croatia, where I have my family, and start a farm. Actually, take over my grandparents' farm, because I have that benefit. I was blessed that I have access to land. So for me, it made more sense for me and my wife to come back to Croatia and do something with that land and actually organize our lifestyles in much simpler way, but much I would say much healthier, happier life here than pursuing a career and pursuing, like, let's say, a normal life like any other person with a secure job, secure paycheck. And I can say that this involves a lot of insecurity. So I can't say that I have security in my life, but that's kind of the way of lifestyle that we'll need to be adapting for in the future. I'll be talking a lot about that in my program, about how can you transition to that kind of lifestyle, and what does that entail, and how can you take over, can you take over the control over your life and design the life that you that a lot of us are actually dreaming of but not capable of doing. My context is different. Each person has different context. My situation is not perfect. My wife and I, we have a farm, but we also are part of the time situated in a suburban situation where we rent. My wife works in the city. I commute to the farm. Actually, the location of the farm is not ideal, so I experience all kinds of problems that other people are experiencing as well. So I'm still, let's say, we are still searching for ideal piece of land. So I have that that perspective of searching for land. I have perspective of finding a way of making things work and selling myself, doing something else than just a regular job. So I have many perspectives, and I'm writing my blog from those perspectives because I'm one of those people that I'm writing for. So that's kind of what I can bring people. I'm not like a expert that you can't reach. I actually whoever subscribes to my email list gets a personal message from me, can get a personal communication with me. If they request, we can even talk. So I'm always available and making myself available. That takes time, but I'm happy to help people because I know how it feels to be trapped in the lifestyle that they don't like. So,
Well, awesome. So tell us right now, because people see it behind you, you are in an office or in a room, and you're in the place in town. You're not out at your farm, correct?
Yeah, I'm not in my farm because now the farm work is basically done. The winter is coming, and when winter comes, that place is totally isolated. So I have a kind of responsibility of, let's say now running my website and running my online business because I got probably like 12,000 people on my email list that are not, I'm not saying that they are expecting, but I have that responsibility to serve them. And that's what I'm doing. Basically what I'm doing, I spend my days, researching, producing content, talking with people, doing consulting and coaching. And that's why, my office is my, that's why I say that I have two lives.
Both lives. You have both lives.
Yeah. I have both lives and both take time. Sometimes, I would spend 6 hours doing, computer work and then, go out and do 4 hours of work, something. So that's kind of, I would say, because I'm producing content, everything that I do outside is taking more because I try to document that and explain that later. But that's my unique skill that I have. Everybody has their own skill, We'll see later. I will outline different ways that people can make a living from farm. I'll outline the whole steps from not having, let's say, an idea, what you want, setting up goals, all the way to the end of making a living. Because I'm in that process, discovering everything. Different pieces are working.
Let me give my perspective on where William's at just real quickly, and then I'm going to ask him a whole bunch of really fast questions, and then he's going to get into a presentation. I think if any of you that are out there now and you're watching the replay, think about Mark Shepard. Mark Shepard is my partner, and Mark does a series that'll be tomorrow night that he's been doing on forest ecology. Mark is 30 years into his journey, and he grew up even in his journey before, so he's over 50 years. Picture if you would have been able to be with Mark Shepard in Alaska 30 years ago as he was beginning his adventure of changing his life. That's what you're seeing with William. And Mark was as good of an educator then and would have loved to have been able to document more closely and better what he did. William's doing that right now. That's what's so exciting about William. I am about William. I think a lot of you are, that he's in the trenches, he's doing it right now, and he's documenting it to share it with you. Right, William? That's the whole point.
That's the whole point of everything. Because in the beginning, when I was trying to make a plan for myself to transition something else, I was actually frustrated that I couldn't see anybody actually documenting or doing or teaching it. I know that everybody, likes to learn about, swales and hoogles and everything, but for me, the big question is, how can I, how can I transition into something that I would like to be, that I will be proud of doing. And that's kind of where my idea for the blog website came up. And I would be, in the beginning, I was researching as crazy as how other people were doing it and kind of deconstructing their model, because if we have people who are doing it, then for everybody else, it takes less time to do what they want to do because there is already somebody, like Mark Shepard. Mark Shepard has done it and has proved it, and we can all follow his model. So if we have more people doing it, more people documenting it, then we have more models, and basically with models we can compress time and other people can do it much quicker.
Yeah, that's exactly our goal here. You couldn't have stated it any better. So let's go into what I call a lightning round. I'm going to ask you about 6 or 7 questions that literally he hasn't even heard some of these. I told him about a couple of them, but I'm going to just ask him, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. So let's pretend, go back in time, and you were 15 years old, and you were just kind of have a beautiful weekend afternoon. You didn't have any other obligations, and you were living wherever you were. What would we find William doing on just this beautiful time when he could just do what he wanted to do? What would you be up to?
Well, if I remember correctly, when I was that age, I just love to spend days walking in nature with my dog. And and I still remember those days because recently that dog passed out. And he was like 15 years old. So I remember clearly walking in the nature and enjoying nature and, weather and rain and thunderstorms. And even, especially on a sunny day, I'm sure that I would be walking somewhere in the nature. Yeah,
wow. So how old was he when he died?
Oh, he was 15 years, I would say.
15. Yeah. All right, so let's fast forward to today. The dog's not here, but you still have your family and others. What would we find William doing again? You don't have to do your internet business. You don't have to be doing farming for the day. What would William be doing?
Well, what I like to do on Sundays that are my day off, let's say, and the weather is nice, I would go for a walk with my wife in the nature. The same thing.
Same thing.
And as I would be, walking, because that's my professional deformation now, I would be just looking at how Mark teaches it, reading the landscape, analyzing things. And because I have that perspective, I would like to buy a property somewhere, then I go with that perspective as well, and I would be analyzing. Maybe a little bit different. I would say that I need to learn how to be in the moment in the nature. Probably that's missing because my brain is constantly working, constantly thinking. So that's different. Back then, I was more in the moment.
Yeah,
now,
you think more, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. So I've asked this question to maybe 500 people on different interviews, and most people actually would do something pretty similar. By the way, I have a fire engine, and you're probably hearing an engine. That's that noise in the background. It'll be gone in a second. Tell us about a book that comes to your mind, or a long article of some kind that you've recently read that you would just highly recommend to everybody else. And if you just can remember the name and the author, that'd be great, or either one. And we'll make sure that the link gets to everybody, whatever, if it's something that you can tell us.
Well, I read a lot. I would read a book a week probably, and recently I was reading a lot of books. Because I'm preparing for the whole program. But what I'm reading right now is Anti-Fragile from Nassim Taleb, and that's not permaculture related at all. I have my I would read permaculture books, personal development books, all kind of psychology books and everything. But this one is important, I would say, because it has to do with everything that I'll be talking about. I'll be talking about setting up a resilient life and resilient permaculture farm. But basically, what we should be aiming for is more like an anti-fragile, some type of a system where people and things benefit from shocks, and that shocks make them stronger. So that's something that I was reading right now. It's a huge book. It's probably not for everybody, but it goes into a lot of things that is wrong with today's, let's say, how our society is set up, and a lot of things that a lot of people could benefit from, and that I will be touching also about being, living in uncertainty, living as an entrepreneur, and just being more anti-fragile in life. So that's kind of, I can throw a book every time I have a program. Probably it will be different.
And anytime you want to talk about others. So Anti-Fragile, we'll get the specific links for you guys. I threw it actually up into the chat, just what William was talking about. How about a person? And this could be either more recently or any time in your life. Tell us about a person that's influenced you, that's important to you.
Well, I had few persons on my journey. Mark Shepard is one of them. David Hogan is one of them. Recently, I would say Elon Musk is one of them, because Elon Musk is capable of dreaming big, and he's not selfishly thinking about himself. He's actually thinking about the whole humanity, and how we can transition into economy and society into more cleaner energy future. There's going to be a big issue. So I respect them, because he's doing big and bold things that we should be, I would say, be more like Elon Musk, and less like politicians who just talk and do nothing. So
right. What about a tool, either a physical tool, an online tool that you, again, have started to use sometime recently that you can remember, that you could recommend to our group that's here? So some kind of a tool that you just think, wow, this is awesome. So again, physical or online, let's say.
I would say, well, of course I like online things, but recently, battery-powered chainsaw.
Battery-powered chainsaw, wow, very cool.
Because it's a battery powered, so you don't get that noise when you cut, your trees or wood. You don't get that noise, but you do the work, and you basically can enjoy yourself, coppicing wood in the forest without the noise of the chainsaw makes. So that's a of course, my laptop, a lot of software that I'm using as well. So as people will discover, I'm more like I like my technology and I like nature, and I think that they can both, they're not mutually exclusive. So we'll talk about that as well.
By the way, I sent out a chat to everybody, and I said, oh man, now I have a train going by. So I buy a fire station and a train track. So that'll be gone in a second. I misspelled Elon Musk's name, and I sent out another message to you guys in the chat. So Elon, and the tool is a battery. We'll talk about battery-powered chainsaw later sometime, or you'll probably tell us about it. That'd be great. Here's a tough one. Tell us about, and be as generic as you want to be or specific, about something that happened in your life that at the time it happened was unbelievably negative. It just hit you at the time pretty badly, emotionally, however. But today, you look back on it and you say, it was maybe one of the best things that ever happened. So some negative event that now you look back on and say, it actually worked out way for the better. Is there something you can think of? By the way, he hasn't gotten this question from me before at all. So whatever he's thinking about, it's the first time he's heard this question.
Well, I had many negative things, and I think that negative things are as I recommend in this book, things are necessary for us to, become stronger and benefit from them. I can see many benefits. I wouldn't say it's a benefit, but not many Americans or Australians are able to experience this. But we all, let's say in Europe, especially in Croatia, we are close to our family, and I would see on many occasions I got 3 grandparents that basically died in front of me. In a sense, they were dying, and I would be there for them. So every time, as I would be experiencing that would be really negative in a sense. But after the whole situation was gone, I would always, that would always remind me how, life is short, and how we should be doing. There is no time for to wait or postpone whatever we want to do in life, because at the end of life, those things are not important. What other people think, or what you should be doing according to others, or anything. What's important that you were doing what you wanted to do. So and I experienced that with 3 grandparents and 1 great grandparent. So
yeah, that's tough. So last question. This is kind of one that we caught. I took this away from a guy that does what's called Entrepreneur on Fire. It's a podcast where he interviews daily new entrepreneurs, John Lee Dumas. And this is what he calls his doozy question. So I'll stop. This will be my last question. Then we're going to turn it over and let William start us through sort of his presentation, which then we're going to continue for hopefully weeks into the future. By the way, that's one of the things we do here. We don't slow people down. We don't put people on schedules. William can teach at whatever pace that he wants, the pace you guys want. You're going to dictate that by showing up and answering questions and so on. We're not going to push and say, oh, you've got an hour. You got to get it all in today. You can take. He's going to take his time to do what he wants to teach about. But here's this doozy question. Have you ever listened to John Lee Dumas, by the way? So maybe you've heard this question then. So you've had a chance to think about it. And here's what it is. He always asks this at the end with people. Let's assume that you woke up this morning and it was very clear that you were not in where you were the night before. You're in a new planet even, but it looks a lot like Earth. And you've kind of talked to some people around you, and it's the same. People are the same. You've already been assured all your needs are taken care of, but somehow you've just been transported in time and space to somewhere else. So you know that all your needs are taken care of. What you found, though, is all you have is your laptop and $500. What are you going to do for the next 7 days, for the next week?
Well, I would do what I'm doing right now, because I would start a website and I would start help people. I would start helping people with whatever they are struggling with, because I know that if I can help others, they will help me, and that's how, that's my life philosophy is first give and then receive. That's the only way that I can see that. That's basically one of the ethics. People care from permaculture, but what I realized is if you can create value in other people's lives, you will receive, benefit from that value back in whatever you want to achieve. I'm not just talking like financial capital. I'm talking about social capital, material capital, and all other things, intangible things. So if I would, be in that situation, I would start my blog and I would start helping people. I would be maybe describing what I'm experiencing now. I would be I would be doing basically what I'm doing right now.
And by the way, you're sort of unusual. If you've watched John Lee Dumas, most people have a little different answers. They're not all bloggers themselves and so on. And you are doing. I kind of expected that William would give that answer. And I didn't know whether he'd listened to John Lee Dumas or not. So we're at the point where I'm just going to turn it over to you, William. We've got about a half an hour left in the hour. I'm going to do a little bit of a presentation at the end about this EAT team, the Economic Action Team, that you guys are all here for, and what William's talking about. And then we're going to take questions at the end, but William's got 20, 25 minutes now that he's just going to go. So I'm going to leave it to you, William. You've got your presentation up on the screen. Go for it, man. It's all yours.
Okay, so let me know if something is not coming clear, or if you can't guys see what I'm
We'll do that
here. Okay, so you can see, just give me a second, I'll just do this. All right. Okay, ready?
Go for it. You're there. We see it really clear.
Okay. So, what I'm going to talk about is how to design and set up a resilient permaculture farm. So, this is just one facet of making a transition to a permaculture lifestyle. And I'll take you through all the steps from the beginning to the end. And you might be asking, why resilient? And it's important to get a context for that, and I'll address that in later slides. So in this program, I'll show you how you can provide for your needs, build self-sufficiency and resiliency, and basically create a life of options and opportunities, while at the same time regenerating and restoring the land. So just a few notes about my inspirations and on what foundation my work was built. And as you can see, we have Mark Shepard and his Restoration Agriculture book. That was a big influence. His farm, New Forest Farm, is one of the greatest examples of what we all should be doing, whoever has the opportunity. Another influence is the Resilient Farm and Homestead, Ben Falk, and his whole systems design approach to things. And of course, David Holmgren, with whom I spent some time with, learning from him, and what was actually amazing is that he doesn't focus only on permaculture but the whole system, and that's why his future scenarios work was also so influential in what I'm doing right now and what I'll be presenting. Okay, so I'll be taking you through three main stages of actually building a resilient permaculture farm. That's research, design, and setup. And here is the overview of the whole program. There will be probably 10 distinct lessons, and depending on how much time it takes us for lessons, we might have a little bit more sessions. So for example, let's say designing living systems is going to be a really, like I say, comprehensive lesson. So that is going that's going to be split probably in 2 sessions. Again, here you can see those 3 main stages: research, design, and setup. So in research we'll be researching the context of, let's say, where we are as a society. And then we'll also be researching how to find appropriate land. After that, we'll go into design mode, and we'll be preparing the base map, then reading the landscape, of course, then designing water systems, infrastructure, and living systems. Once we are done with the design, we'll move to the setup, and we'll be developing implementation strategy. And after that, setting up a small permaculture nursery, and finally developing farm economy. Okay, so let's take a deeper look into each of these lessons. As I said, first we'll talk about the context. In order to understand how we need to design our resilient permaculture farm, we want to be aware of the context of where we are today. So in this introductory lesson, we'll talk about present and future trends and possible future disruptions. And we'll be looking through the lens of 4 big categories. That's energy, environment, economy, and technology. And for this, we're going to extend our time horizon and look into the future, not just our lives, but lives of our children as well. All I can tell you right now is that there are big challenges and there are big changes coming. And we need to be aware of where we're headed so we can create systems and design our lifestyles that are able to both withstand the possible disruptions and be able to benefit from changes that are coming our way. That's why I recommended the Anti-Fragile book. This is the theme that will be going through the whole program. So, and finally, in that first lesson, this is going to be a whole session. And that session, that can be 50 minutes, 1 hour, depending, even with questions, even more. I've been researching this, and there are a lot of interesting trends that are coming. Things that will be changing, things that we can use, and things that we need to prepare for. So, as I said, I'll give you an overview of whole farm planning, and this is going to be water, infrastructure, living systems, farm economy, and community. These are the components of resilient permaculture farm that we'll be designing and setting for. Okay, so after discussing the context in that first session, we'll move to finding appropriate land to farm. I know that some of you might already have some land, some of you might be searching for land. Some of you might be planning to get some land in 10 years. Regardless where you are in your journey and land hunt, this lesson is a starting point. And this is because no matter what your current situation is, the first thing you need to do is define your context. And that means your goals, your vision, and purpose of the whole project of permaculture farm. Ideally, that's why I'm putting it here. Ideally, you want to first define your goals and then search for land that meets that goals, rather than doing it, backwards. Getting some land and then defining our goals and then realizing that your goals are impossible with the land you have. So what I'm going to give you here is a simplified holistic management framework. You'll be able to quickly assess your potential and resources and define your goals, vision, and purpose of the project. In the second part of this lesson, we're going to discuss what to look for when buying a property, when searching for property. The first step of doing a regional context research is also applicable to people who already have land, as this research will give you necessary insights into your climate, landscape, biome, and culture of the region you're in or you're considering moving in. This will be also important because, as I said, one part of creating a resilient life, a resilient permaculture farm, is also community. And so basically that comes first. You want to position yourself where there is a good community. As much as I'm discovering right now that my farm actually doesn't have a community, and that's a big deal because everything, I don't have anybody to trade my knowledge with, and services are expensive. Actually, I don't like the whole setting, but I have a land there, so I'm thinking if I would be in a situation where I'll be searching for land, first I would be thinking about the community and setting that I'm in. So, and then as we zoom into the site itself, I'll give you a checklist of site-specific criteria you should be aware of when considering buying a property. So you can basically come to a potential site and then based on that checklist look pros and cons of that site. Okay, so after we have some land and after we gather some research about our region, the next thing we need is a base map. This will be a foundation for our design drawing and interpretations we're going to make further on. So in this lesson is probably going to be split in two. We'll see how much time it takes. But I'll discuss using Google Earth or Google Maps and other sources to acquire necessary maps for the project, for our project. And that's, we'll need an aerial photo that you can get that easily from Google Earth, and I'll explain that. But we also need a decent topographic map. For that, we can get that from Google Maps, but it's not accurate, and it's not showing that much compared to what you can do, what you can get with a proper site survey or just searching from private companies or something else. Then we'll go through different options for creating a base map. Whether that's just using Google Earth or other programs as well. I'll outline different ways you can do that, and I'll show you how you can do that. I have a course and I'm teaching people how to design, and I can tell you that the biggest obstacle for people is just getting a decent base map. So I'll be outlining how to do that. Sometimes it's much easier, cheaper, compared to how much time you spend on doing that, just to outsource and let somebody else to do the work. And once we have that base map, we'll be also analyzing the terrain features of your site, as well as defining our watershed. That will be important later on. So this lesson would be more computer oriented, but for our design work, this is essential. you have to be able to use these tools if you want to do it yourself and not pay a consultant. Okay, so next we'll be reading the landscape, where we're going to talk about how to read the landscape and perform the initial site observations. So basically here I'll guide you through the whole process of understanding your landscape. We'll go through analyzing terrain, searching for water, microclimates, weather patterns, soil, vegetation, and so on. Basically, we'll spend some time explaining each of these components. We'll talk about different types of surveys you can do on your property, as well as some online tools and apps you can use for doing observations. When I say apps, you know, smartphone apps or other apps that in a computer or everything that is going to be useful. And because we have a base map, then we can actually grab that information from previous step and put our observations on the map. But we'll also be creating additional maps as well, like a sectors map, a microclimate map, terrain features maps, and so on. This is going to be also a comprehensive one. And as I'm doing my observations and as I'm learning from Mark, who has an amazing ability to observe the landscape, I'll put more into that as well. Okay, so water. This is going to be our first design sketch. So we start with water management. And here we're going to focus on developing effective and extreme weatherproof systems that boost the overall resilience of your farm. Because if you remember, the context is important. So we need to be designing for whatever climate changes we are expecting, whether that means more drought, more rain, more floods. So we'll be going first through planning your water harvesting system. So going through the process of calculating how much you need. So what is your area's annual rainfall? What is your catchment area? What is your budget? And then based on that, we'll be talking about finding the most suitable places for your water storages. We'll be discussing finding key points, key line, and designing key point dams and other types of dams as well. For this, we'll be using knowledge from previous lessons of assessing the base map for main ridges, primary ridges, and primary valleys. We're going to talk also about finding the best position for your water tank storages. And once we have that water storage in the landscape, the last thing we need to design for is harvesting that water, distributing that water by using harvesting and erosion rates, and developing irrigation pipes network, like the one you can see in the bottom left. After water, we design for infrastructure, and that means access, structures, and fencing. And here I'll also group homestead area. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So we'll be dealing with positioning roads, identifying the best locations for a house, subdividing a property with fencing. And this is important because the costliest mistakes you can make are the ones regarding the infrastructure elements of your farm. For example, house that my grandparents built on my farm is on a floodplain. It's not exactly on a floodplain, but it's a little bit more up the hill, but the water keeps on coming every year, closer and closer. And as I heard, there were stories that water was actually in the house. So that's a house in the wrong position. You don't want to do that with your design. Those are big decisions, and we'll talk about some principles of deciding where to put what. So we'll go through considering possible locations for access roads. We'll look at some examples, talk about principles of designing for access. We'll find the best location for your house in a given landscape and what factors to consider when looking for the best spot. We'll look at how to design fencing and what types of fencing to use. And finally, as I said, we'll look at the homestead design. And by homestead, I mean Zone 1 and Zone 2. Here we'll talk about energy efficiency. So positioning of homestead structures, your options for generating energy, and also utilizing advancing technology. And here I mean optimization and even robotization. That's why I said, utilizing trends and actually benefiting from future trends. Okay, so as a final part of our design work, we have our living systems design. This will be a comprehensive lesson since food production is the primary focus of most permaculture designs. Here first we'll go through zone by zone and describe each planting area in that zone. For example, Zone 1 annual gardens, or Zone 2 orchards, or Zone 3 agroforestry systems, Zone 4 forest farming. And also we're going to discuss how animals integrate into these growing areas. Essentially, first we'll be determining growing areas for gardens, food forests, orchards, and farm forestry, pastures for animals. As well, once we determine that areas, we'll go into details of each of them in the next step. So this means that we'll be talking about the precise details of creating food forests with swales or permaculture orchards, farm forestry systems, and so on. We'll look at layouts, planting patterns of each of these systems. So, for example, if we're going to talk about Jeff Lawton style food forest, we'll be talking about designing swales, where to put swales, what is the distance between swales, what to plant on swales, what is the space in between the trees on the swale, and so on. So I'm assuming this will be a really huge lesson, and I'll be adding more as I learn more over time. Okay, so once we're done with the design part, we can start implementing our design on the site. So there are certain steps we should follow in that, and I outlined 9 of them in my post of how to set up a permaculture farm in 9 steps. And these steps are based on the keyline scale of permanence. So first we have developed water supply, as we talked before in the design. In the design also we have water first. So that means water storage, water harvesting, distribution of water. After that we go to defining access points, then restoring existing buildings and introducing new structures. After that, subdividing the farm with fencing, improving the soil, and then planting trees and crops. Then animals follow. Finally, we develop a farm economy. So I'll be expanding on this strategy, and we'll talk about developing an implementation plan based on your priorities and your budget. Finally, we'll talk about performing some simple earthworks, as earthworks are basically the first step in implementing a design. So usually when we are performing earthworks, these include water earthworks, infrastructure earthworks, and once we have soil disturbed, planting trees, improving the soil with green manures. So earthwork subject is rather comprehensive. We'll be touching on that as well. You'll probably need a lot of trees for your project, like every other permaculturist out there. So we'll discuss growing them yourself and saving money, because usually the biggest cost in establishing permaculture site, except earthworks and infrastructure, is growing trees. And sometimes when people don't have enough to do infrastructure works or or something, earthworks connected to infrastructure, their biggest block is getting trees. So if you want to save money, you want to grow them yourself. And I spent my last year experimenting with this, and I grew hundreds of trees without much effort. And as I said, my time is limited. So this was a combination of growing trees from seeds and cuttings. Seeds were easy to come by. I found seeds in my nearby forest, or I would grab seeds from other people's backyard or something, or I would order them from eBay. So I'll be outlining all of that: how you get your seeds, how you get your cuttings, and how you actually start and set up a small permaculture nursery that can grow you 1,000 trees by yourself. And this nursery can be anything from 5-gallon buckets to nursery boxes, nursery beds, and so on. So I'll give you a plant propagation guide, but from permaculture perspective. I'll be doing all of this for myself, so I'll be creating a checklist for others as well. Okay, so finally we have farm economy. And here I'll be outlining different ways of making a living from a permaculture farm. So I recently ran a post about this, and what I found is that there are 7 different ways you can make a living from a permaculture farm. And only one of those is being a permaculture farmer. We also have secondary producer of value-added products. We have marketing and distribution. We have nursery, where you can do plant propagation and animal breeding. Services related to your farm or farming, that can be ecotourism, recreation, basic healthcare. Then we have teaching education, something that I'm doing, something that a lot of people are doing. That's just only one small part of the whole, making a living from permaculture farm thing. And finally, we have consulting, where we have designing and implementing designs. So I'll be exploring these so-called occupations in more depth, but also we'll be talking about how you can develop your own strategy, your own transitional strategy based on your skills and knowledge that you have, and other things as well. And finally, depending on, if I'm going to split this into 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, we'll look at some case studies of successful permaculture farms that we can deconstruct and use what works for them, and actually adjusting a little bit for our own situation, so we can implement that into our lives. And that's basically it. I don't know how long it was or it wasn't, but
no, that was great, William. Everybody, boy, you have just been fed not so much the details now, but you're going to be, obviously, this is going to be minimally, a 10-week session, and he's already said many of these might be 2 or 3 weeks each. So I'm going to guess that we're 15 to 17, something like that. And we're not going to put a limit. He can go as long as this is going to be so valuable for all of you. Remember, you're going to be learning this from a guy who's in the middle of doing it himself right now. And we're going to end here. You guys think about putting some questions in, but I'm going to take over the screen real quick for just a second to talk to you just a little bit about sort of the logistics of this and how this is going to work. And William, are you seeing my screen now? By the way, you seeing that? No, you should. Everybody throw in a 1 in the chat if you now see, oh, I haven't clicked the show my screen. Now you should be able to. I didn't click the right button yet. Now do you see it?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to take about 2 or 3 minutes and go through this. And as I'm doing it, you guys throw in some questions. Throw in 1s on your screen if you would right now, if you enjoyed what William just did, and if that was good for you. If you think you're going to get some value out of this course that he's going to be doing over the bunch of weeks. If you put in a 9 if you don't think you get any value. Frankly, you probably wouldn't still be here if you put in a 9. William, there's just 1s just flying through here. Excellent. I don't know if you're seeing that, but thank you, everybody. So that's going to be our sequence with what we're doing. But let me give you a little logistics about that. So I'm going to add some slides here real quick. So you're viewing this through what's called the Economic Action Team. And I'm going to go quickly here. So let's say that you wanted to not just get this, but what if you get up to 15 hours a week of live broadcasts from world experts on teaching, coaching, mentoring on other topics like ecological aquaculture, sustainable indoor agriculture, permaculture, transition like William's going to be giving you, natural regeneration, soil health, alternative health concepts, the sharing economy, and much, much more. What if you could get that stuff? Well, you can. You're going to get, all of you that are on here, you're going to get actually an invitation to what's called the Economic Action Team, and it's going to be free, so you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to pay for anything. And it was founded, this whole principle was founded by a guy named Dennis Weaver. Some of your older folks will remember Dennis. He did television shows like Gunsmoke and McCloud. He's dead now, but he was my mentor. He was the guy that helped me. And if somebody asked me those questions that William did, I would say that Dennis was somebody that was really influential in my life. He formed a nonprofit back in 1993, and the whole intent of that nonprofit was to help other people make some money making the planet better. And he made up this word, economics. And so since 1993, this entity has been around. I took it over when Dennis unfortunately died about 10 years ago now. It's coming up on a 10th anniversary this coming spring. And our entity has one goal in mind, and that is to help people make some money making people and the planet better. And so we have a couple of really cool programs working with starving people around the world, and I'll talk about those another time, not for now. And we have programs where we help entrepreneurs by funding them, by paying them, helping them get their businesses started. So those are all things that you can look forward to. There's a train going by again.